Moving right along because I'm a little behind schedule at the
Okay,
moment.
go ahead. Yeah, let's do it.
I'm re- our net. We have another talk coming up. Another person who has been a close collaborator, who Julia, very recently actually, the wonderful Joey Holder, and Joey is just so wonderful, it's so amazing, and I love the projects that you guys have been working on together, the shows that you've done, which we'll hear about in just a few minutes, and the current Spur residency that you're building together that has just offered such an unbelievable opportunity to young artists to experiment with new media. Um, to give a little bit of background, Joey's work raises philosophical questions of our universe and things yet unknown regarding the future of science, medicine, biology, and human machine interactions. Working with scientific and technical experts, she makes immersive multimedia installations that explore the limits of the human and how we experience non human, natural, and technological forms. Mixing elements of biology, nanotechnology, and natural history against computer program interfaces, screensavers, and measuring devices, she suggests the impermanence and interchangeability of these apparently contrasting and oppositional worlds. Everything is a mutant and a hybrid. Oh, that's such a cool sentiment. Connecting forms which have emerged through our human taste, culture, and industrial processes, she investigates complex systems that dissolve notions of the natural and the artificial. GM products, virtual biology, and aquatic creatures are incorporated into an extended web, challenging our perception of evolution, adaptation, and change. Joey's had so many incredible solo shows. Most recently, the Abyssal Seeker show, which was at 17 Gallery, Samel Paris at Spring Health Aquatic Center in London, which Julia, you were really closely involved in, and so many more. We're going to hear all about it in just a moment. And so, with that, I'm going to switch it over to Joey.
Hello, my name's Joey Holder. I'm an artist, a producer, and mentor and educator. I'm based in Nottingham in the UK. Thank you so much for inviting me to do the talk. Yeah, it's an amazing lineup, and yeah, really happy to be part of it. So I'm going to talk about a few different projects that I've been doing over recent years. So I'm going to be playing a video throughout the talk, and that contains research images, different screen grabs of websites that I've made, films, found images, all kind of mixed together. And I like to show my work in this kind of continual flow because I see my work as this kind of like even the research and kind of found images as part of the process and part of the work and part of this kind of like constructing this kind of world which doesn't just exist as artworks inside galleries. It's very much like about how it spills out and kind of becomes like a big kind of constellatory network, if you like, and that's for me where the work resides, not in kind of like separate sort of elements. It's like how it kind of like connects and layers and flows together across like multifaceted like platforms and multi-dimensional in multi-dimensional ways. So and yeah, I guess like the digital realm has very much changed the way that I think about work. Displayed on the screen is like various different websites that I've created, various different like Tumblr sites and image blogs. I have probably over 60 or so of these different sites, and the internet is obviously like completely saturated by information and imagery and things that have been made, and it's almost like I use that material as an artist as my kind of like raw material. I feel like I don't need to make anything in the world anymore because it feels like, yeah, everything has been made, and it's almost like I'm just using that material, and I feel like I'm just a kind of like another interface or filter of that material, kind of reconstituting it, recomposing it, collaging this stuff together, and not actually claiming that I'm kind of like making anything new. So I guess like within my work, I'm dealing with nature and the world at large. I mean, I see nature as being pretty much everything in the world, so humans and what we make included within that, as well as all of the animal and plant species and how we're kind of interconnected into that. And within my work, I often depict different creatures, often choosing quite weird and wonderful creatures, aquatic creatures, insects, um, and depict them alongside our human kind of understanding of those creatures. So often I will depict different frames of references, like different knowledge systems that we use to try to understand these creatures. So for example, I will often use scientific means of explaining these creatures. So I'll kind of show these natural forms alongside scientific diagrams, mappings, symbols, yeah, different kind of systems. And I really want to kind of like reflect on how the systems and the languages and the things that we kind of create as humans are quite limiting in understanding the world that we live in. And so often, yeah, I'll mix elements of biology, nanotechnology, natural history against like computer interfaces, screensavers, measuring devices, and I guess like it's to suggest the kind of impermanence and interchangeability of these apparently kind of contrasting and oppositional worlds. And I want to describe the world because I think the world is a constantly kind of like mutating and transforming place. It's not, you know, it's not static. And I mean, often, and I think often within very much the modern project at the moment, it seems as if everything is becoming like a branch of technology and computer science. And even life itself, we are attempting to datify and to categorize in this way. And I think that this is extremely dangerous way, a limited way to look at life, and it's impossible for us to be able to kind of like capture it with this project. And so a lot of my work, yeah, kind of like grapples with this. Yeah, so I guess like I see each project and each artwork very much as creating like fictional or maybe faction based on fact as well, kind of creating worlds and kind of constructive environments that respond very much to contemporary real world events in the world around us. And each of my artworks, I kind of like consider like a set, if you like, with different filmic and narrative and architectural visuals and sound elements, and each of those kind of like constructions is made like uniquely for the kind of conceptual underpinning of the project. I've worked with lots of different researchers and practitioners in my work as well, like through conversations and through workshopping together, through creating work together. So not just artists, I've worked with computational geneticists, I've worked with marine biologists, behavioral psychologists, investigative journalists, and I've worked across like different themes, including future farming, synthetic biology, and deep sea ecosystems. So like a couple of projects then that I'm going to talk about. Ophiuchs was a project that I did in 2016 where I collaborated with two scientists. One was a computational biologist and the other was a marine biologist looking at deep sea creatures. And for this project, I was looking at the datafication of life itself, particularly like biological genetic data. And very much these days, it's almost as if like biologists think of life as being able to be something that can be programmed like a computer. I mean, it's almost like DNA code is thought about like computational code, in the way that they talk about like how it can be manipulated and different parts of the code cut out and then put into different things to like reprogram organisms. And again, like I think that it's very problematic and limiting to think about life in this kind of like limiting way. And it was really interesting doing these projects and having these conversations with these scientists, because it actually made me realize that there's so much, again, like there's so much that we don't know about life and about the world. And one of the things that I learned about genetic DNA is that scientists only know, I think it's less than 3% of what DNA codes for. So the other 97%, they haven't got a clue. And like when you start researching these kind of like different big biotech companies, medical kind of like organizations, it seems like their rhetoric is very much about like what they can do, and like these kind of like big scientific breakthroughs that they've made, and really focusing on that rather than focusing actually like that still there's there's relatively a lot of stuff like that that isn't known and that they still don't know. And excuse me. So for this project, I created like a sci-fi kind of like scene of a futuristic medical room, and the audience were at the very center, if you like, and there was life-size models of high-tech medical imaging equipment, including like an MRI scanner, C-arm X-ray machine, genetic sequencing machines. And I guess it like really explores the promise of a network world and connected genetic data directly and fluidly to biomedical equipment in order to carry out medical procedures by computers. And I imagined this medical room to be completely automized. So it was being fed information from a diverse sort of genetic data bank, which was sampling different specimens from humans to plants to animals in the kind of like furthest regions of the natural world. And it was a place where I imagined synthetic biology had been fully realized and applied to human health and evolution, and increase our life expectancy and improve our biology itself. And kind of like think about this project as like life being kind of like something that can be manipulated and computer programmed. And this was very much a reflection on real world events. Of course, there are things like the Human Genome Project, which aims to collect like as much genetic data from different human beings as possible, and including other creatures. There's the Earth Bank of Codes, I think it's called, which is another project which aims to collect data and genetic mapping of all the different like species on Earth. I mean, and again, like there's so many species on Earth that are completely beyond our reach and like that we haven't discovered. The deep sea, for example, is this hugely like unexplored territory where we know very little about the life forms that exist there. So again, like these projects seem like extremely ambitious in like what they're kind of like trying to do, and maybe like missing the point like altogether, that life isn't sort of meant to be mapped in this kind of way. So what was just on the screen was a clip from a film that I made. I was asked to make a film responding to conspiracy theory, actually. It was back in 2017, I think it was. And it was a very strange time. Trump had just got into power, Brexit had happened in the UK, and it was a big kind of like political uproar and quite a like a dramatic, changing like political landscape. Um, and like that was really being reflected, across the media, across social networks. And there was this is when the start of terms like filter bubbles and echo chambers were coming about, like talking about social media as this idea that your worldview was being reflected back at you through social media platforms. So you was often in this kind of you're often in this kind of like bubble of your own kind of belief systems, and that being very much reflected back and added to. And so I started to get very concerned at this kind of premise, and like the kind of like online arguments that were going on, and these kind of like binary kind of politics and thinking. And so I created this film to kind of like reflect on that, and also like following this project, I started up a new large scale project which was called Ad Credo, the Deep Belief Network. And that was really about thinking about how we can be manipulated online, and our whole worldview can be manipulated and changed, and our very behavior can be manipulated through like algorithmic processes and manipulation and control. And so I made a project that was all about, as I say, like the construction of belief in online networks. And it had like a large scale installation. And again, like I kind of created this speculative company as well, which was kind of like meant to reflect on some of the operations that are happening in the world. So there's there's obviously lots of companies that exist, like Cambridge Analytica, for example, that harvest our data when we are using our phones, when we're online on our computers, and use that data to kind of like manipulate our actions, our behavior, to get us to buy certain things, or to believe in certain things, or to vote even in a certain way. And I mean, I guess like the very advent of digital media has shown that the world is made up of this kind of mass of circulating, disjointed and kind of contradictory a lot of the time information. And this communications network can be manipulated by online companies, groups and individuals, which can give rise to new narratives and even new political ideologies or conspiratorial like theories as well. And so I made this project that took the form of this kind of like speculative association, like a corporation that I created, where ideologies could be disseminated and used to kind of like manipulate people. And I was blending conspiracy theory, sci-fi, corporate and religious belief systems, like, and sort of we wove them all together in this work. So I had like a series of CGI talking heads, which were different political figures like Trump, Putin, various different aliens, had Kanye West in there, and they was all sort of talking over each other and talking about things that they had like kind of like said in real life. And there was this I guess like there was this kind of like hellscape and noise like created because they was all talking over each other, and these kind of like wanting to kind of like reflect on these like different sort of like narratives and fragments of stories that we're kind of like fed over the internet, and like how we how we can like be how we can be shaped by those stories and narratives. And I wanted, the work to kind of operate by holding up, I guess, multiple different viewpoints and mirrors, reflecting different cultural sets of belief systems, and to question like the very foundations of what constitutes our worldview. And I mean, as we've seen in recent years, popular opinion and what does sway us into believing certain things or certain narratives may not be grounded on certain truths, but based upon, I guess, like the success of ideas and beliefs across digital networks. And this, so, information can be replicated and spread very easily now across the internet. And it might not be based on like the truth of that story, but how well it kind of like is received, and how many people kind of like spread it, and how it connects the dots with other narratives.
The water of life that the alchemists have is as great as for the thing that would transmute everything into gold.
Wow, Joey, that was such an amazing presentation. It was so cool to see some of your works and see clips from different videos, ones that I've, never seen before. There was that one with the black and white grid and the kind of ghostly shapes of the different creatures. That's a new one for me, from this thing. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, I think that work, I think that was the shark work. It was called Selachimorpha, which is, basically the Latin name for sharks. But that was done back in 2017. So, a little bit older now. Yeah.
Cool. No, I'm just really, I was talking, we were pre-chatting before this, and I very selfishly wanted to get the two of you together because I was just saying that your show at Spring Health Aquatic Center, Semelparous, is easily one of my top 10 favorite exhibitions of all time. I just thought it was so smart, so beautiful. And I understand.
I was saying behind the scenes as well, I'm sure you say that to every artist.
I certainly don't. But no, I also understand that was the first time that the two of you had worked together. And I'd love to just learn a little bit more about that show, the intention behind it, and how your collaboration, came about.
Yeah. Do you want to talk, or shall I talk, Julia?
I could start. That kind of exhibition came together really in response to that space. So the site where the installation was in a disused swimming pool. So like a leisure center in North London that had been like abandoned and vacated, and sort of I think it had been empty for like 5 years by the time we were there. So it was quite like, it wasn't like in bad shape and like really dilapidated. And so I was given access to this space and went and saw it and like immediately thought of Joey's work. So we just started the conversation from there and like figured out how we could sort of respond to what the site already had to offer.
Yeah.
But maybe Joey, you can talk more about that, how it came together.
Yeah, I mean, like being offered a space like that, I mean, like I think we started from nothing as well. We didn't have any like funding in place. We just kind of like had an idea and like was really excited about the space itself. And that, and that kind of space is like a dream to me, really. It's like a disused swimming pool or a disused mall, or like something that's kind of like being dilapidated, and like the ceiling was like starting to leak and stuff like that, and so you could already imagine like, I don't know, like something else like taking over, like I guess nature in inverted commas like taking over the space again. So it was really exciting to I mean, and we was just having a pre-chat before actually as well, and saying like that space, I mean, it's almost like for an artist, like, it felt like I didn't have to do, that much, because the architecture and everything was already like there. It's such an amazing space. And I mean, for me, like I very much respond to like the architecture and the story of a space as well, and think about the work as a kind of like an extension of that. And I don't really like the kind of like classical like white cube gallery space like either. So it's always kind of like working, yeah, against that, and kind of like creating very immersive like environments, I guess. And, you know, yeah, creating something that you can really like step into and, yeah, be fully kind of like part of this crazy world or something. But yeah, the work was centered around a particular creature, like the European eel. And I mean, yeah, I could probably talk too much about the European eel. And yeah, I probably mentioned in my talk as well. It's a pre-recorded talk, so I can't remember how much I went into it. But yeah, it's about the journey of the European eel, and that it travels like this 3,000 miles across the sea. And it's a creature that nobody has really witnessed it breed, and, you know, like people don't know very much about its life cycle. And so that's something that really interests me in my work, like that there's, you know, there's such kind of like diversity of creatures and animals and plants in the world. And you know, a lot of our like certain like Western scientific understanding would kind of like have us believe that we know so much about the world, when in fact we still know very little about it, and very little about the animals and plants, and, you know, in our kind of knowledge systems. So yeah, the work was about this kind of like speculative journey, I guess, of this eel, like this video installation.
I wanted to
I could carry on about the eel, but I probably should.
No, I actually wanted to, because I think that, you know,
Yeah.
like it's so fascinating that we live on the European eel. I mean, it's, in a lot of ways, it's so mundane and so commonplace. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, especially in the UK, like eel pies are a traditional food, and it's something that's been consumed and lived with for centuries, millennia. I don't even know. And, you know, but how do we not know these things about it? You know, how is this thing that is so commonplace and seemingly so mundane, this animal that is all around us, you know, in rivers and different bodies of water, you know, how do we not know how it breathes?
Yeah.
You know, it just is kind of mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think that, you know, it's not just that particular creature, it's so many creatures. I mean, I think, you know, I mean, maybe looking at like the kind of more micro world as well, like we don't know. I think it's like less than 2% of like the bacteria that lives on our own bodies. You know, there's so much, yeah, that we don't know. And yeah, like you were saying, the eel, like, I guess we think of as something that's quite, yeah, banal and like quite commonplace. It, you know, it lives, I think, in like all over Europe, but it is actually now considered like an endangered species. It's on the kind of like critical list, and there has been a huge effort to try to save this species, because, yeah, it's kind of very important to obviously like the rest of the food ecosystem and so forth. But yeah, it's, I mean, it's a creature that has like puzzled scientists and even philosophers and things for centuries as well. Like Freud, when he was studying medicine, famously had to dissect I think like thousands of eels to try to find their like sexual organs and find eggs inside them, and he never could do this. Aristotle, I think it was Aristotle that said that eels like come kind of like spontaneously from the mud. They just come alive, and they just are, because he couldn't find an answer to again, to like how they bred. So they just kind of like spontaneously came out of the earth and came out of mud. So yeah, I mean I find like that, I don't know, like that kind of like point of where science stops, if you like, and like kind of like those kind of crazy other stories or myths, or like these kind of like fill-in kind of things like that we create as humans when we like, can't find out what we want to know about something really kind of intriguing as well. Yeah, and I think that that's kind of what I try to do in my work, is kind of balance between myth and science or something. Yeah, actually, I've got a book by the side of me now.
Oh, wow.
If you want to know more about eels, I highly recommend this book.
Oh, I do. And I don't know if you guys
But
know.
maybe we should stop talking about eels. I don't know.
Well, wait, can you
Well,
also talk about the footage that you from the eel farm, because that's also like carried through.
Yeah, so I was quite lucky to be able to travel. I went to China, and I was actually supposed to be in part of this film festival, screening some films out there. And quite often in China, actually, work gets censored, and you can't show it. So I ended up that I couldn't actually show my work as part of this festival, but actually it was quite it worked out quite well, because I was like, okay, I'm going to have a holiday and I'm going to go and see my friend in South Korea. And so I went there, and she asked me, she said, oh, we're going to go on this trip this day. And she didn't tell me where we was going, but we visited an eel farm. And that's when I got all of this footage of the eels, basically, sort of really in this kind of compact vats, and they were all kind of rivering around each other. And that's I guess where I became really interested in what were these animals, and I didn't know that this kind of industry existed as well, where they were being farmed. I mean, they're not bred in captivity because they can't breed. They haven't even seen them breed. But so they're caught as young animals, and then they're grown up in this farm environment where I did this filming, and then they're sold as food. And I mean, we think of eels, I guess, as maybe in England, at least where I'm from, I think of them as quite quite a cheap food. But in other places, they're quite a prized dish. So
Isn't there
also thinking about this kind of economy of this animal as well. I think it's the most trafficked animal in the world, which is insane. Because they can fetch really high prices, so people do catch them illegally, and then they're sold illegally.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, it's just so interesting how, one small creature can connect to so many different cultures, so many different histories, so many different ways of moving around the world. The whole festival of Worlds in Protocol is about thinking through different ways of being interconnected, thinking through the things that confine and restrict us, the things that we don't know, the answers that we don't have. This eel, I didn't even mean to, bring up so much about this eel, but I feel like this is such a great metaphor, for all of this, and such a beautiful case study of how, all of this works. But I want to, switch focus a little bit and talk some more, not about the eels, but about the Abyssal Seeker project, which is the project that we're showing at Gray Area, as part of New Art City, in New Art City, as part of the Diorama exhibition. My colleague's going to drop the link in the chat for anybody on the live stream right now. And also, I dropped some links to the Samel Paris show, both the version at Harlesden High Street at the Spring Health Aquatic Center, as well as the downloadable zip file version at Offsite Project, which is, just still a shout out for them because they're awesome. Really great online gallery space run by Elliot Burns and Peter Areola. Please check them out. The link's in the chat. But moving back to, this show and this work, Abyssal Seeker is a project that is so expansive. You've had 3 solo shows over the summer where different chapters of the project were told. I think it's the Abyssal Zone, the Benthic Zone, and there's one more as well the name is escaping me. Those are presented at Futura in Prague, at 17 Gallery in London, and the third one is going to be, remind me, Joey.
So there's already been Prague, London, and it's currently in Slovenia as well, at the Ljubljana Biennale, and it will be in Sydney as well next year for the Sydney Biennale. But I basically split up the project into these different zones, which was meant to represent different zones of the deep sea, actually, and like the open water as well. And yeah, so each of the zones, like, I guess, is meant to represent like different ecosystems within these different like places. But the focus is on this kind of like abyssal zone, which like was actually it's quite cheesy, but it was inspired by like watching a Blue Planet episode, actually, where there's sort of like a lake at the bottom of the ocean. So it looks like a lake when you look at it, but it's just that the water is like a lot more saline and salty. So it looks like there's a kind of like lake at the bottom of the ocean. And like on this particular scene, this underwater footage, like creatures like swim in and out of this lake, and they kind of get quite like, because it's quite toxic, the lake, they kind of like get all a bit like screwed up if they stay in there too long. But I kind of thought about this kind of place as a place that's like completely like beyond our understanding, really. I mean, it's a well-known metaphor, I guess, that, you know, we know more about outer space maybe than that's what's at the bottom of the ocean. And so many of those creatures, you know, every time there's this kind of exploration to the bottom of the deep sea, you know, we constantly find life forms that we've never seen before, and also life forms that like live and exist in a completely different way than we would understand as well. I mean, for example, like we used to think that everything needed to live through it, like using photosynthesis and to create energy in that way. But there's life forms at the bottom of the ocean that process chemicals in a whole different way. Anyway, I'm going on too much. So the Abyssal Seeker project was like focusing like on a group of animals that lived in the deep abyssal sea, and the kind of narrative of the project was that other beings, that other humans and other species were trying to like get to this place at the bottom of the ocean, as a kind of way of escape, I guess, and thinking about like how in our world, on land, you know, we're kind of saturated by surveillance systems and control and data, and everything's kind of like being we're being mapped and processed in a way. And I thought, you know, like if we could, I don't know, get to this like place, or not even get to this place, or just kind of like understand this place as like our world being not that place that can be like categorized or tracked or anything else, using this place as that kind of metaphor. That was the kind of idea of the exhibition, really. So yeah, and it's a kind of like the main part of it is a kind of like CGI film of this kind of like abyssal deep sea place with these creatures kind of moving in and out of this space.
This work. So if anybody hasn't realized this already, I'm obsessed with marine biology. I was a little kid. It was my first dream job, and I was like, you know, really.
If only we'd done marine biology and not.
No, I think we've talked about this. Like, why did we go to study art and do this? Like, just become marine biologists? Like, it makes no sense. But you know, but it's always something that's really spoken to me, because again, it's another metaphor for ways of thinking through. Like, you know, we have this whole crazy world, and there's parts of it that we don't even know about, that we've never seen, that nobody has seen, that is unknowable. It is not possible for my body to go to the bottom of the ocean for so many reasons. And that really speaks to, you know, we need to, how can we make, I hate this word, but how can we find solutions, or rather than solutions, maybe positive pathways forward, and make the right choices when we don't even understand how those choices are going to impact creatures that we've never even seen before. And that is quite profound to me. And there's so much in this too. I mean, just thinking about those creatures at the bottom of the ocean. Another artist who's in the festival, Huntress, who will be performing on the last day. She'll be closing out the festival. She and I have talked so much about this because, in so many, a lot of the creatures at the bottom of the ocean, like for many people, they inspire the both of us, as queer people, in the sense that these are animals that survive under the most inhospitable conditions possible. They are in these dark, dank, dangerous, highly pressurized, highly saline environments, and by logic, they should not exist. We understand, the what's it called, the thermophilic bacteria and all these kind of microorganisms. That makes sense to me. But when you see like these big, like like wolf eels and these really like bizarre animals that look like something out of a sci-fi film, they shouldn't. It's almost like they shouldn't exist, yet they persist despite. And so for me, that's always been something that has brought to mind resilience and persistence despite persecution or struggle. There are protocols in place, physical protocols of gravity and water pressure and, and saline and all these other things that make it seem impossible. Yet despite those constricting protocols, these animals are thriving in their own world.
Yeah.
And I think that's
But
something
I guess we only see it as like constricting because that's, our logic and we only see that like, oh my God, something can't survive in that environment because it's not our environment. But yeah, that kind of gives you the possibility. Like there are loads of different environments and like you say, loads of different creatures that thrive there. It's just we need to get out of our own kind of, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but how do we do that? I don't know. But
those creatures like exist they've manifested in those environments. Like that's where they live. That's their existence. They don't know anything else, and they couldn't survive on our elsewhere.
Yeah. If we brought them up to the land, they couldn't survive here, isn't it? As well. But yeah, but I like what you were saying about the, like the kind of bringing in like the queer side of things as well. And I think maybe not only thinking it like about hostile environments as well, but like thinking about, I mean, there's some theory and text written around this, but like about queer ecology and things like this as well, and the idea that nature has always been queer. Like there is every like possibility and every talking about sexuality as well. There are animals that can have both sexes or that can change sex or that I don't know, like every species of animals now, I think they've proven like have gay sex like in every single species. And there is all of these weird sexual mating practices of animals and stuff as well. So like, our very conservative, like limited way to think about our bodies and sex as well is like can be completely blown apart when we look at like other species.
Absolutely. And, I was just showing just some clips from the exhibition. We took the film piece, the 3D environment, and we tried to make it something immersive that you could move through. It's not as high resolution as the original because we're working with web and, we wanted it to be loadable.
I still haven't seen it, so I really want to see it.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, you have to check it out. It looks really great. And, we took out some of the creatures and have them moving through so you can see some of the abyssal seekers
Nice.
and you can just be in the underwater cave environment just for a moment. It's a nice grotto to go and, spend some time in. Oh gosh, there's so much I want to talk to you guys about, and I think that, what I want to...
You're already out of time, I don't know.
We are out of time, but, there's the one final thing I wanted to talk to you both about was the Spur project that you both are working on, which I have just been wowed by. You guys did an online exhibition. The title is now escaping me, but I'll find it in a second and link it in the chat. But it was a virtual exhibition, I believe, built in a Unity environment that was just so so rich. It was the kind of art exhibition that I dream of curating. It was so immersive, and it involved so many young artists, so many emerging artists, so many young people just really starting out. And it was really inspiring to me. It's this virtual exhibition in a fantastic 3D environment that has these bizarre biological constructions and artificial constructions. And, I want to learn more about, what Spurt is, how you guys came together on it, and, what your plans are for the future to close us out a little bit.
Yeah, so, oh God, I'm going to cough. Sorry. So yeah, you can view it it's still online. It's spur.world, and then we just simply called the oh my God, I've got a tickly throat. The world's the exhibition that happened, Spur World. So you can see it there. Julia, you might have to introduce it. I'm like next
I mean, Spur was Joey's project, so it was started basically as a residency program. Where all of the artists were working like online on this custom platform. You were working with Ohm's Social Club because basically we wanted all the artists to develop like avatars, so they were like anonymous on the platform. So in like a series of workshops and like kind of world building training that happened like within that.
Yeah.
Right? And then
it basically like it happened as well because we were, it happened at the start of lockdown where we was thinking, oh my God, there's this group of artists that are going to be graduating from their studies and they're going to have lost the opportunity to show work in the usual way. And, us guys have, some skills, some digital skills. So we'll try to help out the best that we can. And I mean, and like Julia said, like one of the things that I guess drove me to like want to do the project as well is like to think about maybe like creativity in a way that happens online and a potential. This also came from working with Social Club of like the artists, not going in as themselves, like creating these avatars and pseudo identities and sort of, I guess, like, I mean, they were very young artists, but like losing their egos, I guess, and like thinking about like what it could mean to create without like their past self and their past ego and create a narrative through a different character. So yeah, at the back end we had like a very kind of like social platform where people could like write messages to each other, share images, like there was a screening room and things like that, but create a world and create a narrative together. And there was all these different characters, so this really rich organism, this thing came together, and then they decided to do this this virtual world at the end of this kind of like intensive 6 months that we had together. And we visited different online worlds. Like we visited like really old spaces like Second Life, and did lots of practical workshops as well, like learning different digital tools. But it was like really a place to bring people together and to think like, what can we do like outside of the kind of like arts education structure, I guess, as well, that could kind of push things online.
Yeah, and the exhibition was all of them like developing like the subconscious worlds of their avatars, basically. So like when you go on the website, each of the artists has like a card that you can flip over and then enter into their Unity world directly. And so they all like were just amazing in terms of the scope of like what they were able to learn and the outcomes that they were able to develop. Like we had such an amazing incredible.
I mean, and it was just done through an open call as well of graduating artists, and lots of them most of the group didn't know each other. There was a couple that knew each other, but now it's great. Like they have this supportive network that they've got together, and they're all great friends, and we can see them, helping each other on their different projects. And I think that's the greatest thing, like to get out of it, that, you can kind of create this, just kind of like put seeds into starting like something, and then they built it and they run with it, but, just plant a few seeds and then, it's really grown. So yeah, and we're hoping to do it again in the future. I actually wasn't successful in getting funding for it. I just found out that I couldn't get funding. But I think like the project also probably needs to adapt as well, because it was very much a response to what was happening at the time and COVID, and was all online, and perhaps it needs to now evolve again, and probably like camps in the forest in real life instead of like camping out in Second Life.
Well, camping out in Second Life is cool. We love that here too. And what a fabulous project. If you hear that, audience members, and you want to support Spur, please get in touch with them, because it's a really fabulous program that is doing a lot for young artists around the world. And I'm deeply inspired by it. We are so out of time. I want to read really quickly. We got a comment from Sammy Wheeler. Sammy is the architect for the exhibition in New Art City, and just a fabulous, fabulous person. And she writes in the chat. Oh, 1 second. I just lost it. I just dropped it. Oh, I have it. Sammy wrote in the chat, when we were talking about, the relationship between queerness and Animals Under the Ocean, and Sammy writes, I've heard it called pernicious anthropocentrism. It's challenging for humans to empathize with non-human intelligences because we have a habit of anthropomorphizing them. In the same way, cis people try to empathize with me as a trans person, me being Sammy, by trying to imagine what it was like if they wanted to transition themselves. And I think that's a point for thought for us to leave on. I think reimagining our anthropocentrism in a different way, and not centering the human in that.
And finding ways to get out of ourselves somehow. Like, how can we find tools to do that? Yeah, I'm very interested in that. Or how can we shapeshift or something?
Exactly. Oh gosh, we're so out of time. We got to move on.
No, it's all good. Thank you so much.